Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all again to this Innovate Ireland event. As we just said, we are recording it for our YouTube channel, which is publicly available. So if you're not supposed to be here, then now's the time to throw on the fake beard. Obviously, some of us are well ahead of the game on that. But it's good to see so many familiar faces from the Innovate Ireland community on the call as ever, and a few new faces too. So you're all very welcome. Those of you who haven't been before, for your benefit, my name is Charlie Tuxworth, and I'm one of the founders of Innovate Ireland. Innovate Ireland was born from a whole load of coffee shop conversations that sort of tended to fill gaps between meetings in Dublin. A few of us would meet up, swap stories, share our challenges and frustrations, and generally try and put the world to rights in terms of innovation. So while we noticed that there was a lot of support across the island for startups, for early stage companies, there was very little out there for anyone implementing innovation in established organizations. So eventually this led to the creation of Innovate Ireland. And we've now become the all-Ireland go-to community for practitioners, advocates, and explorers of innovation. We're sharing some really good content, best practice, and thought leadership. And we're now representing the membership at national and international level. So if you do enjoy the event today, and I hope you will, then check out the website, which we'll post into the chat shortly. Join the LinkedIn group, and then please spread the word as well. So to the purpose of today, while I'm sure that almost everyone involved in the call is involved in, everybody on the call is involved in some way in bringing new ideas through to realization, whether it's new or updated products, services, operations, I would hazard a guess that quite a few could be missing out on the benefits available through the R&D Tax Schemes. Brendan Burns, who's joining us today, is the Director of R&D Tax Credits for Aspen White, and he has the brief to provide guidance and advice on this subject to companies on both sides of the border. And before taking on this role, Brendan gained significant real-world experience by driving innovation within the education sector. So he, like the rest of us, has some scars on his back when it comes to innovation, some real practical experience. So the usual format applies. Brendan will talk for a while, probably 20 to 30 minutes, and then we can get into discussion and questions. Do ask anything that you feel you need to know. Brendan has said that if he can't answer off the top of his head, he'll look into it and he will come back to you on it. So Brendan, if you're all set, then I'd like to hand over to you to tell us more.
Great, thank you very much. I'll just share my screen and hopefully this will work okay. So you see it? Everybody see that okay?
You've gone into speaker. There you go, that's it, that's you then. Yeah.
Everybody see this okay. So thank you very much. I don't know whether I've interrupted your lunchtime or if you've just snaffled in a sandwich just before this. I really appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with you. I met Charlie, I think it feels ages now, so it was about August time with a big ridiculously sized coffee cup in Costa in Lisburn. And we just chatted, and it was a great opportunity that he's offered me to come and present to you. So a bit about us. Aspen White is a chartered accountants firm that was set up in 1993. But Aspen White Ireland, the company that I run, we're about 17 months old now. And the idea is that we're going to be trying to push ourselves into both the Northern Ireland market and the Republic of Ireland market. And I'm happy to answer any questions or speak to anybody at a later date. Just ask away. Okay, so as any sort of prudent tax advisor will advise, it's important that it is not a reactive strategy that you have as a company towards tax, and implementing proper expenditure and project management of R&D and any innovation streams that you're doing within your company is prudent going forward, so that you can recognize the streams not as a retrospective claim of previous years, but it's actually part of your revenue streams going forward. So it's really important that you have that conversation with your accountants or any R&D tax advisors out there. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because I think everybody here pretty much knows exactly what this is. But it's really, the idea is that you're taking risks out there. You're spending money, you're spending time, you're spending your ability and your company's experience investing in something that is either brand new or you're adapting and improving something that's existing to create something that is not out there, that makes your company market leaders or will be market leaders. And the idea is that you're spending money on that. And both the Republic and the UK and many other companies or countries out there, they all want that innovation stream to be recompensed. They all really want to incentivize your company's innovations. And this is where the R&D tax schemes come from. Okay, what is the R&D tax relief? Basically, it's to support companies investing in innovation, and there are various R&D schemes in all the jurisdictions. There are at least 3 in the UK, and there are 2 from our experience in the Republic. There may be more. It changes every year in terms of budgets, and these schemes will help you reduce the risks going forward, while providing incentives for companies to continue developing new ideas and improving products. The UK and Ireland, their schemes are very, very similar. The payouts are slightly different and the payout strategies are slightly different, but the percentages and the calculations are roughly the same. Okay, and again, I couldn't go into every single one of them specifically now because it would just eat up into the time. But ask any questions at the end and I will happily fill it all out in an email with you. Okay, I want to address one major misconception that has a knock-on effect. There are a lot of accountants out there that their job, they're excellent at what they do, and they don't necessarily have an R&D department within their accountancy firm. And so if you ask them, are we doing R&D? Are we eligible? They may not know because it isn't something that they speak about, talk about, and read about every single day. So they may not necessarily be the best people to give you the advice. They're not processing 50 to 60 claims a month. And really looking at all the different sectors and markets that are out there. And so R&D is not just exclusive to large companies, and it's not just exclusive to companies that have labs, people in white coats, and that you have to be inventing something brand new. It's not as straightforward as that. The guidance is, I don't want to say deliberately vague, but it's open to interpretation and really understanding the guidelines from both jurisdictions. And as a result of this misinterpretation or lack of confidence in the system, a lot of people think, oh, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to, and they avoid it. Really, if you're doing some form of innovation and you talk to an advisor with experience, you're missing out on revenue, you're missing out on tax relief or cash back. And that money can be spent in any way that you want, and so that's going to help your company grow, fix any issues that you have in the companies. And it's just asking that question to myself or any other advisors or your accountants if they have an R&D firm. How do you qualify? So you must be a limited company. You must be liable to corporation tax to be eligible in both jurisdictions. And this is where, and the next section is where the gray areas come from. But it is really important that there must be an advance being made in some field of science and technology. Now, it's up to you and your advisor to identify what science or what field of science or technology that it is. And that's some of the areas where the confidence comes in. For example, one of the case studies that I'll explain later on, they were a coffee company. And they were roasting in a completely different way at a different temperature. And so they were biochemically degrading the coffee beans in a way that was never done before. And their accountant said, no, you're just roasting coffee beans. But because they just didn't have the confidence in that, they dismissed it. But they did the right thing, and they asked us, and we came, well, you're changing the biochemical composition of coffee in a different way that's never been done before, and therefore they were eligible. So, and it's important to actually be able to see that you're seeking an advance in any of those fields of science and technology. And also, even just as important, that you're seeking to resolve an area of uncertainty. And what they're trying to say there is that you're not just saying, I'm making something new, I don't know, a new user interface, or you're a new website. It's brand new, it's never been done before, but the work behind it, while it may be hard, it's not innovative. Okay, so just because you're creating something new, or just because you're adapting something, if you can't at the very start of the project go, you know what, I'm not too sure if I'm able to do this, but we're going to give it a go. We're going to try this. We're going to try that. We're going to try this. If you're doing that, then the likelihood is there will be eligibility there. If you're just going, do you know what, this is going to be a pain to do this, this, and this, but I just slog through it and I'll get it done, then that won't be eligible. And again, that's just important that you have that conversation. And I just want to clarify that when you're dealing with the uncertainties, it's not necessary to resolve them. Projects that you've invested time and money and expertise in that, and if they have failed, they probably still will be eligible. So it's important that you have that conversation as well. So just because you've tried something and it hasn't worked, or your company's gone in a different direction, that money has still been spent. You have still tried to solve an uncertainty related to an advance in a science and technology. So therefore, it is worthwhile having that conversation in terms of eligibility. The last line there, it says there's a window of opportunity. Now, this is different between the UK and in Ireland. You can do 2 retrospective claims for previous tax windows in the UK, and you can do only 1 in the Republic. So whether that changes in the coming years, that may change. But at the minute, we can do 2 financial years for the UK and only 1 retrospective. After that, it'll be your current year and then moving forward with whatever advisor that you're going to be working with. Okay, so what is it worth? How is this actually going to benefit your company? Once you've assessed the eligibility, once you've assessed that you've got an advance in science and technology, and that you've understood that there is a challenge that isn't easily solved, and that you've spent money on this, then it's eligible for you to make a claim. As it says there, the average claim in the UK is about 57,000, and in Ireland it's about 55,000 euros. Okay, 680,000 68,000 claims were done in the tax year between 2018 and 19 in the UK. And it's important that you're going to invest once you've taken the time and to assess your work and assess the eligibility. It's important that you invest the time in doing the work properly and analyzing the work with your advisor, be it me or be it you, be it whoever it is. And it's really, there's a lot of people that think, oh, you're the expert, you work it out, but you need to have that 2-directional conversation with me. I need to be able to go to you and say, tell me all the work that you're doing. Oh, I'm just doing work. I'm really, really busy. Isn't going to help, because I can't write works of fiction based on your website or based on the projects that I can find on your LinkedIn profile or whatever. I need to know what your projects are, what the advances are, and what the uncertainties. If you're not prepared to give me those couple of hours to get 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, you know, realistically, the mechanics behind it could take anything from 4 hours to 40 hours for the work. But if it was 40 hours for all the work, that's going to be a substantial claim. And so if you're willing to give me as much information as I need to embellish the claim and to make it as accurate as possible, then it's worth your while. So you've got to look at it from that. There has to be an investment for you to be able to just get this investment back from either jurisdiction. It's not just free money. Okay, so and again, it's important to speak to any advisor that you want. If you're not sure, there's nothing to lose. Okay, so once you've spoken to that advisor and you've identified eligibility, you'd be crazy not to claim, be it through those advisors or through your accountant. If they say your work's eligible, then definitely make that call. How is it calculated? Now, there's an infographic later on in the presentation, and I will happily elaborate on this. But really, it's down to what staff have you got working, what subcontractors you're working on the R&D that it has been identified as eligible within your company, what consumables that you've spent on it, what prototypes have you made, and it's important that we identify that the prototypes can't be sold on. So if you're making money on those prototypes, then they're no longer eligible. But if you're keeping those prototypes for demonstration purposes, or you needed to make 15 different prototypes and test them all to destruction, all 15 of those are eligible. So it's important that you identify all the costs, and this is why we really do impress on the importance of proactivity when you're going along, that you project manage and project account as you're going along in terms of consumables, because the most difficult claims that we have are the ones where I say, tell me what you did 2 years ago. If I'm honest, I can barely remember what I did on Monday, let alone 2 years ago. So in terms of workflow and issues that you had to resolve and money that was spent, it's better just making sure that that's properly project managed. Okay. Once you've identified all those costs, the current system for SME in the UK is that if you've spent 100,000 on qualifying R&D expenditure, the SME scheme in the UK and in the Republic qualifies you for 130% of that value. So you have £130,000 to be able to be deducted from your taxable income. Okay, so depending on where you are, whether you're in a position of profit, it will bring your tax bill down, or if you're in a position of profit and it brings you into a loss, there will be cash repayments, or if you're in a position of loss and it takes you into a further loss, there will be other cash repayments. Again, because the variables are so wide-ranging there, it's counterproductive for me to go through every single one of them for both jurisdictions. So, and again, I don't think anybody here wants to talk about their financial positions openly in a forum, so more than happy to have those individual conversations at a later date. Okay, how does it work? Every single one of these situations really does depend on the size of your company. So that'll identify which scheme that you're going to be in. It'll also identify what grants or what state notified aid that you're actually utilising. So for example, Innovate NI or Innovate UK or similar similar grant funding streams in Ireland. Each one of those has its own set of rules and that are tied to particular guidelines. Some are eligible, some are not. If you have spent them, then you can't claim for those projects. But if you speak to an advisor prior to taking the grant, they will weigh up the pros and cons of your financial position, doing an R&D claim or taking the grant, and analyze which one's better for you. So if you're looking at taking innovation grants, make sure that you're having that conversation with an advisor. So once you've identified the size, the type of scheme, what grants you have, how the R&D is implemented within your group. For example, are you using subcontractors? Have they got specific contractual remits for that R&D, or is all the R&D happening within your company? Then you start analysing how this R&D, how this relief can be worked. So like I mentioned before, your corporation tax could be reduced within the current tax period. So it could be that corporation, so it could be generating losses that you could bring back to a previous tax window, or it could be brought forward. If I'm doing a claim for somebody for December 2019 and I'm generating them losses, I can pass them forward to 2020. It depends on which one's more tax efficient for that company. And that will be something that the more information you give for me, if I ask you if I'm doing 2019, a claim for 2019 or 2020, it's better that you give me all the tax comps previous and all the tax comps afterwards, so that I can say, if you move this forward, we get more money, or we move this, we sacrifice losses in a different way. And it's, again, I don't want to get too financial because every situation is going to be completely different, whether you're in profit or loss. So it can be offset against previous tax, offset against future tax. If you're in a group where you have different limited companies, we can offset that in different ways to maximize your group relief. And then finally, it can be given as a payable cash payment. There are slightly different rules in terms of the UK and Ireland regarding that. In the UK, as far as I'm aware, in the UK, it's a one-off payment. You would get all the money back. In the Republic, it's a staggered payment scheme, but I would need to know more information about that one. Okay, and again, it's complete. Whether you're in profit or loss doesn't matter. Okay, it's definitely worth having the conversation. So here are the questions that the rhetorical questions that you should be asking yourself. If many of these are yes, you really need to be having that conversation. So first one, it's non-negotiable. Are you a limited company? If so, then whatever innovation you're doing, you're going down that path. If you're an LLP or if you're any sort of partnership or anything along those lines, you're not eligible for R&D. Okay, are you looking for a way to remain at the forefront of your industry? If so, you're probably investing upon it. Have you identified a problem that exists in your industry and you're trying to find a solution? Now, you may not find that solution, but you're trying, you're spending money on it, you're spending staff time, you're spending salaries, then have that conversation. Are you investing in making your business more efficient and more cost effective? That in itself does not sound like there's science and technology, but you might be using technology in a different way. You might be, looking at the carbon footprint and analyzing this from an magnetic point of view, or any sort of tech way that you're doing something to make it more efficient. The likelihood is you're spending money and time innovating and solving a problem. The obvious one, have you thought up of something that's unique that the world has never seen before? The likelihood is you've innovated to do that. Now let's, if you're a cottage industry and you want to create a brand new sausage that's never been made before using new ingredients, the likelihood is that will not be, you've just mixed up a couple of ingredients, so you're not pushing the science and technology. But that's not ruling out cottage industries. It's just really making sure that, again, you've identified what advance you're making, what technology it is, and what problems that have you had to fix that were not easily resolvable. And again, so the last point is, have you had to seek any to resolve any uncertainty or advance your knowledge? And the last one, have you had a project that has went wrong? So all of those questions, if the majority of them are yes, the likelihood is you should be having a conversation with somebody, just to sort of get the creative juices flowing, to see if any of these are linked to your company or similar companies that you know. Are you making products cheaper or faster to produce? Are you using different materials? Does that material then not react with the rest of the, so for example, if you created a brand new iPhone, but it is a third thinner, so each one of them, the components inside won't fit in that current. So, and I know nobody here is working for Apple, but you see the idea. So because the shell is thinner, the components will need to be changed. That will have an impact on heat. That will have an impact on distribution, on speed. So each one of those will have a knock-on effect on this. So when you have your current aspiration, you have your problem that you want to solve, it's identifying, is that eligible or not? Anything that has a prototype, so that you're not selling, that you're testing to destruction, will be eligible. Increasing strength and durability, you're changing the engineering of dynamics of each one of your products. So having that dramatic change, is it increasing weight? Is it changing cost? All of how are you offsetting this cost? And it's important that you just have these conversations. Okay, designing, developing, I could read them all out, but you can see this, and I'm sure Charlie will happily share this presentation with you at the end. Okay, so now that we talked about briefly what costs that you have within your company. So director's costs. So that would be the gross salary of any director that has been involved in the R&D. And it's important that we have these conversations that you say, well, my director did this, this, and this, and that we tie that to some form of the eligibility of the project. Just because you have a director, they may not be involved in it. Now, they may not be doing the R&D. They might be having a weekly meeting that is update. I don't like this idea. I want to change the direction of here, change the direction of that. That weekly meeting then will be assessed, and you'd have 1 hour a week that is a R&D feedback meeting. That's eligible. So they may not necessarily be involved in the specific R&D project, but they're involved in the process in some form. Exactly the same as if you have a team of engineers that are creating this and they're doing all the work, but you have manufacturing product lines that are building it and then coming back and giving you the prototypes. Those people that are on the manufacturing line, they're not doing the innovation, but they're involved in the process. So it's important to have that conversation with your advisor and saying, right, okay, John Smith's my head engineer. He's working on it. He's my head of R&D. That's his job, is R&D. So his salary would be 100% of that would be eligible for R&D. But I've got Phil and Tim that are on the production line, and their job is this, and this. But 4 hours a week they're going to be doing my prototype designs. then that's all eligible. And it's identifying those. Subcontractors and consultants are both restricted to 65% in both jurisdictions. So, and it's really important to identify what their remit is in terms of what they're doing. If you say to them, I want you to create this new product and I want it to be doing X, Y, and Z, they'll go off and do it. But if you say to them in a particular way, I need you to create me something that can do this. I don't know how to do it. That's your job to do this. And they have to invest in the R&D, then the likelihood is that that company, that work that they're doing is eligible for R&D. And it's important that you identify which one it is. So having that conversation, you have a subcontractor. The first conversation I'm going to be having with you regarding subcontractors is, what are they doing? What specifically are they, and what contractual obligations have you come to in terms of this? Because once that's identified, it'll be either that company's doing the R&D or your company's doing the R&D. And it's important that we identify that. All consumables and materials, that's self-explanatory. Full cost of prototypes. Again, the prototypes that have not been sold on. So tested to destruction or used for demonstration purposes. If you're in a large factory and you have 10 production lines and you're using one office in that warehouse to do R&D, then that heat and light that is and the utilities that you're spending for the company for that office block, for that warehouse or wherever it is, there will be a proportion of that will be eligible for R&D because you're spending money on it. Those boys are using electricity for their laptops, for the production lines, whatever they are. So there will be an apportionment of the utilities. Again, testing will come down to consumables and materials, but it's important, and this bit comes back to the proactivity. Okay, if it is not in your accounts, we cannot claim for it. And what we advise all our clients going forward, once we've done the retrospective claims, going forward, we say make sure that you have specific nominals for your R&D projects, so that once I get it's so refreshing when I get clients that I've had for a couple of years that have come to me and they have a nominal line saying R&D for this year is spent for that, then I know that that's straight away, because then as soon as HMRC is able to say, well, where did all that money come from, we can project manage it back, project account it back, and say all of this was consumables, all of this was that, and it takes that question away. Okay. So yeah, that's roughly the introduction. So again, it could be either 1 or 2 years previous, depending on which jurisdiction you're in. That it is, if we've assessed and you have eligible criteria work, then it is important that you're taking advantage of this, and you can spend that money however you want. And it is so. Just to clarify the process, we're a chartered accountants that have been running since 1993. And the R&D scheme in the UK has been going since the year 2000, and we've been at the coalface since then. So if we haven't made a claim for a particular field, it's not out there. So that could be manufacturing, engineering, architecture, anything at all. The likelihood is, if I haven't done it, somebody in the company will have experience of that field. One of the biggest concerns that is, you mentioned HMRC and everybody goes, oh, it's the tax man. We're getting very worried about dealing with the tax man. I'm not too sure. We back your claim from start to finish. Now, we can stand by that claim as to the best of our ability. We have ex-HMRC tax inspectors that are working for us, so they scrutinize every single one of our claims prior to it being sent to HMRC. And they'll say, yep, I'm 100% happy with this, or no, we need to elaborate on these parts, or check this and double check that. So we cannot guarantee that any claim cannot be inquired upon, but what we can do is that we guarantee to stand by you through any inquiries going forward. So and again, any company that says to you, now if you've been on any of the whisper claims training or anything like that, quite a lot of the sort of more reputable companies, we cannot say we can guarantee 100% acceptance of all R&D claims, because they can recall claims from 20 years ago, 30 years ago. There's absolutely nothing to stop them challenging a claim and asking questions on it. We're 100% confident that we have collected all the information that will answer any of the questions that they have. So there's nothing wrong with getting an inquiry. Obviously it wastes time and it slows the cash flow down. But it's important that you know that you have the confidence behind us or whoever your advisor is, that we will be able to stand by the claim, be able to answer the questions that the inquiry is, or have the confidence to come to you and say, we need X, Y, and Z. We don't do the claim, send it off, and then wash our hands of it. So we would manage it all the way through. Okay. And just to clarify that the rest, the R&D office that I run, that is not the only service that we offer. So if there are other, you can see it on the website. I'm not going to do the big sell on what Aspen White is all about. Okay, so any sort of case studies that we have, more than happy to go through all of these, but I'm just going to highlight a couple. This one was a gas implosion manufacturing plant. So they came up with a brand new idea. So this was something that was never been done before, completely novel strategy. They spent, in 1 year, they spent 817,000. So we were able to get them back 174,000 back on that. Okay, so their technology was never been seen before. And so that is so now they're able to scale up this and pass it on an international market. The next one, this is a local architect in the UK with offices in Belfast, Dublin, Manchester, and in London, and they have massive buildings that are both listed and non-listed, and each one of these construction challenges comes with its own set of R&D restrictions. And it's important that they had that conversation with me and in our Wales office and actually say, is this eligible? Is this not eligible? And they come back with every single project and say, this is a listed building. And the questions always just come back to what advances, what is it that another architect would come in and go, yeah, I see what they've done. This is easy. You know, it's a hard job to do, but we can do it. So, you know, and it's identifying that advancing science and technology, who did it for you and why did they do it, and what challenges were they able to resolve. And again, as you can see, last year we got them 106,000. Okay, this was the coffee that we mentioned before, specific roasting that has never been done before. They did it at different temperatures using higher pressure, I think it was. This was something from one of the other offices. So they completely reconstituted the coffee beans in a different way and marketed it to that. Again, they spent in 1 year, that included staffing, materials, retrofitting their existing roasters to do these jobs. They spent 89,000 on that, and so that was what that was their claim was equivalent to about 30 grand. Okay, and again, there was another waste and recycling one and another glass printing. Again, it's just important that you have that conversation with somebody. If you're advancing a science and technology and you're solving a problem, so we always talk about the head scratch moment. If you have a head scratch moment and you're like, yeah, we can do that, but in your head you're like, I have no idea how we're going to do that, but we'll give it a go. If you've had that conversation with a client or in one of your offices, the likelihood is you're going to be spending money on that.
Brendan, can you take a question at the moment? There's a hand from Alfred.
I'm done, so that was perfect timing. It's almost as if that's been choreographed.
Well, of course it has. Alfred.
Up. On mute, I think, Alfred. Hello?
No, we still can't hear Alfred.
Can't hear
It's
you.
very faint. It's not on mute.
There's
but
a
it's very
voice in the
faint.
distance.
Maybe just put the question in the chat window, or did he?
Yeah,
I think
he did actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another
So
question.
what Alfred was asking was can one claim for costs of patenting a new idea or a project?
So you can't because the patent itself isn't advancing the science and technology. You can't claim for the patent itself. So that you can't claim for the patent. So no, we work with Patent Box and we work on using that to make your tax relief as effective as possible. So we do it in line with the R&D tax relief, but you can't if you're paying for but what we would say to anybody that is patenting something, the likelihood is the work behind that you are doing, so we can claim for that, plus we can then work on Patent Box simultaneously.
Okay. Hopefully that answers Alfred's question. I'm not sure where you're based, Alfred, but I know if you're Northern Ireland, then Invest and I do provide support for IP protection, which I think goes as far as those kinds of applications. So if you're not talking to them about that, it might be worth having that conversation too.
And obviously in the Republic, Enterprise Ireland will provide similar support.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got a question for Brendan. Are there any other hands up that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, Connor.
Yeah, Connor.
Connor.
How you doing, guys? Brendan, thanks very much for a great presentation. I've been involved in R&D tax credits when I was working for the man, let's say, in other multinationals. So you're not necessarily getting close to the knitting, the dirty stuff. Now that I have my own company, I kind of ignored it to a point, and when I saw the invite from LinkedIn, it definitely sparked an interest. I suppose my challenge is figuring out who can recognize this credit. So in my scenario, I work for clients. So clients give me problems to solve. So they're paying me to make prototypes, MVPs, and in cases get to scale, and hence the name of our company, Protoscale. So who should recognize the tax credit? Should it be my client or should it be me? I'm obviously hoping that the answer is me. And how do I go about that? Like, obviously I have no problem in helping my clients make it cheaper to work for me, but it's as long as there's some benefit as well, both sides. So does it work for me? We do some internal product development, which I think is nearly a no-brainer to shove that down. It's path A, but this is a little bit more path B, and I don't really understand.
Yep, it's a really good question, and it all comes back to how you contractually related yourselves to that company. So from the sounds of things, you sound like you're either an externally provided worker or you're a subcontractor. So and really, when they come to you with a problem, are they letting you? It's how they word the problem, and if you want the eligibility to be in your domain, it's making their it's making their project as vague as possible from their point of view, so that you every investment that you're making is to solve. So they'll be coming to you with the initial aspiration to say, I want I don't know, I want X to be 25% faster. I don't care how you do it, just figure it out, solve the issue. Okay, so then if you put into your contract with them that Protoscale, or we will invest in all the necessary R&D for this, then it's you that's doing the R&D. If they're paying you to do the R&D, then it's their R&D that they can claim. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that cuts you off from a revenue stream. What we do, and what quite a lot of R&D companies do, is we'll create an introducer program. And so what I'll do, if you are a subcontractor and you have multiple clients that are all asking you to do R&D, and they're very specific, then what you can do is you can go to them and say, listen, X, you really, this amount of R&D that you're doing, you should be claiming back on this. And go and speak to the company that I work with is Brendan at Aspen White. You have to listen to his Northern Irish accent, but hey, that's half the issue. But once you start speaking to him, if I do the work for him, there is a percentage of that claim that you will get from our fee. So that will not come out of the clients, that'll come out from, so there's both ways. So if you can contractually make it vague enough so that you're doing all the R&D, you're solving all the problems, then because you haven't fully been given a specific remit, then you're doing all the R&D. If the other way, then you get them to sign up with me and you would get an introducer fee for that.
Okay, it's good. Good answer. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks, Connor. Now there's a question from Martina, and then we've got one on chat from Catherine. Martina?
Yeah, Brendan, before Martina asks that, Brendan, could you stop sharing the screen just so we can see, see people a wee bit better? Thanks. Sorry, Martina.
No problem.
Hi there.
Hi, Brendan. Hi, Brendan. Just a simple, hopefully it's a simple enough question from a startup perspective. So let's say there's a startup that's been incurring costs, say on R&D, but they're not incorporated, they're not even a sole trader, they're just incurring these costs. So I appreciate, let's say then they incorporate, so I appreciate that they can't claim back costs incurred to date, but can they start claiming the R&D tax credit once incorporated, or must the project commence within the limited company, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. I'm actually dealing with two I can't believe it's snowing outside. I can't believe that. Anyway, so yeah, I'm actually dealing with two sports equipment inventors that are exactly in that boat, and what they have just recently incorporated, and they're now, so it's important that they set their company up that everything goes through the business account. So they can set up a payroll that goes into that. Even if they're not taking a salary off that, their personal allowance of 12,500 would go into that, go in as a director's loan, or depending on whatever way they set that up. But as long as, if they're incurring losses and they haven't started trading or selling on it, they're still incurring losses. So like I said, it doesn't matter in the financial position of the company. As long as the company is active and investing in it, there will be the chance, and the work is eligible, there will be an opportunity to claim there.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you must commence it then within the limited company. It's just,
yeah, all the costs need to be in the profit and loss of the limited company. Yeah, they do.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Brendan.
No problem.
Okay, Brendan. Catherine had put up a question on chat for us, which is simply worded. Great presentation, says Catherine. Absolutely. In your experience, what is the average percentage of SMEs that actually avail of R&D credits effectively?
Not enough is the broad stroke answer. You look at every single article that's being pushed out there in terms of any of the bigger Northern Ireland companies. There's less than 20% of SMEs in Northern Ireland are actually taking advantage of this scheme. A lot of this comes from the misconceptions. It really is the idea that for every time that I have the conversation, I'm just doing my work. You know, like you have engineers that are doing really high levels, high specification projects, and they're going, yeah, but that's my job, that's what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, but you're solving something that's never been solved before, or you've been given something and then the government legislation has changed what you've had to do. Say for example, I don't know, a drainage system that is being designed in a particular way, and then the architect comes in and goes, no, our roof isn't going to be like that, it's going to be like this. So your whole scheme has had to change. You've had to adapt that, you've had to redesign it. That's involving you spending money on something, so it may not necessarily be a highly lucrative claim, but because you're investing on time readapting something that you've already created, it's definitely worth having that conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Brendan. Catherine, did that answer the question, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very interesting presentation. My eyes are open to what you can claim for.
Likewise.
And I'm actually really feeling bad about stuff that I've let go in the past, and I'm sick as a small hospital sitting and listening to stuff I didn't claim for.
I talked to a guy who had a box of he decided he'd create one of these new wireless smart hub, you know, thermostats, but he created it in a different way. He made it cheaper, blah 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 blah, and he said he had 70 different prototypes all in a box just gathering dust, and that was 3 or 4 years. He said that was about 3 or 4 years ago, and I went, that's a box of money that you have there that's just now you can't claim for it, and because they didn't put through in the accounts, then there's nothing that can be done. Plus, it was outside the claiming window. But it is just having that conversation with every single friend that you have and just saying, you know, what money you spend on it. You know, have you made a prototype? Then why haven't you claimed? It's just it is a case of why haven't you claimed?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Brendan. Now, Charlie has a question. I think you're up next, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you. Brilliant, Brendan. Thank you for that. My question is about R&D versus RD and I. So the innovation bit coming into it. I mean, at times through your presentation, I was concerned because it sounded like you need to be inventing, whereas most businesses aren't inventing. They're taking stuff that is new to them and applying it. So where does the line sit in terms of R&D tax credits, in terms of creating something new? Is it new to you, new to the industry, new to the world?
It has to be new. It has to be new to the industry. It has to be new to, and again, the first line, the first question the HMRC will say is, where is the advance? If you are a company that is creating a new CRM and they're designing it from scratch, the likelihood is that the technology to create that CRM has come from HubSpot from behind it, and they've done all the R&D behind it. Now that website and the CRM that they've created is brand new to them and will take their business to another level, but that's developing their business as opposed to developing the science and technology. Now, if, for example, they're creating a brand new app that literally no other app is doing in that market, then it's really important that they identify what's the difference between it and everything else, and what innovations have been made. Now that could be in manufacturing, engineering, construction, anything at all, food tech, CRMs, anything at all. As long as it's important is having that first conversation to say, where's the advance? And if you can say, well, no other company in the world does this. For example, I had a company, and this was, it's difficult when you're having these, because there's so much work that these companies will have invested in, and then so there was a toy website reseller, and they said we're now doing, we spent a load of money on creating our website, and we've got a live chat option, we've got pictures that take you to the product, and I went, but what's different between that and what Amazon does, or what's different between that and what eBay does? You can't just compare your website with similar websites. You have to compare your website with all websites. And it's just, but if they were able to say, well, we do this because Amazon didn't do that, then bang, then you've got, and it's just identifying why it's not business development and why it is development of science and technology. So you're absolutely right. Adapting new or adapting something existing, 100%. And again, it's a very common question where people will go, oh, I'm just changing something, so therefore I'm not doing anything new. But have that conversation. As soon as you say modify, adapt, simplify, streamline, any of those sort of buzzwords that you're having with your clients, have the conversation. It's definitely worth having.
Thanks again,
Great.
Brendan.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian Dernan, I think we've got just a couple more minutes left for questions, but Brian, we'll get your question in. You're on mute, Brian.
Hello.
Hi, Brian, you okay?
Yeah, good, Brendan. Listen, thanks for that. I squandered my few seconds there on muting. It was a question really about business innovation, services and things like that. Is there room for that within this process? People say if you're doing coaching or mentoring or engagement or your leadership or those kind of things, is there room for that within this process to claim back R&D work in there? You're delivering something in a new way. Say, for example, Six Sigma, the guys come out with, this is the process we're going to do for problem solving. It was kind of new and revolutionary. How would that sit in this arena about claiming back that new kind of way of doing things, or would it at all?
It's a really common question, because there's a lot of companies that are going out there going down the adapting coaching strategies. If your innovation is in coaching, then it's an education, and therefore it's not classed as science and technology. If the way that you're doing it and if the method and approach that you're doing is innovative, so say for example, 18 months ago, people started hearing this thing called Zoom, and Teams became a little bit more prominent, and you revolutionized the way teaching the content is being done, then that's innovative. But if the innovations within education, pure mathematics, social sciences, marketing, like market analysis, then it's not eligible. But it's not. Again, it's But what you see as, oh, well, that then therefore I'm discounted, still have that conversation. Tell me at length what the projects are, and then you might be able to get bits of it and say, well, we had to do this, this, and this with the back end servers because, you know, no server or no product that we had could do this. So then I got a guy to do this, which was a nightmare because of X, Y, and Z. It still may not be eligible, but it's having that conversation.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks,
Okay.
Brian. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you, Brian.
Brilliant. I think we're about out of time for questions, Charlie. So it's over to you for a wrap up, I believe.
Well, Owen, you had your hand up, so if you have a quick question, then do that. It'll only take me a minute to close out.
Okay, so Brendan, my question is simple, but let's see. We talked about if it's for sale, you can't sell the product, the output, or you can't qualify for credit. But in the innovation methodologies, you'll come across different phrases, but they're talking about learning loops and different kinds of experiments, different kinds of tests. Well, some of the tests are testing the desirability of a new solution. So you might have, I wonder, would people pay for this feature? You're not selling the final solution. You're just wondering whether a feature is commercial.
Yeah. So I'd need to know more in terms of a specific, but the likelihood is that you're going to adapt whatever you've tested based on its desirability. You're going to adapt that again. So then that part of the feedback loop, it's still part of the feedback loop. So it is still qualifying to a certain bit, to a certain extent. It's just analyzing the percentage of it. It may not be 100%. It, but you might not be able to claim, you might, for example, if it makes profit, you might be able to claim a certain percentage of it or whatever. But again, it just needs to be specific to that.
Brilliant. Praise the Lord and pass the biscuits. Charlie, it's your turn.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had a topic on here that has so many shades of grey involved in it, because it's just kind of, well, it depends, and I get that. I mean, it is a really tricky area, which is why, as Brendan said, you can talk to him or talk to your accountant or whoever. But what I'm taking from this is seek advice, probably in relation to this more than anything else we've covered. So we have a couple of minutes left, so I just want to say thank you so much to Brendan Burns for taking the time to talk to us today. It has been incredibly insightful and useful, and thanks to everybody for the great questions and discussion. And it's really good to see a few new faces on here as well. So please do keep in touch with us if you're new, and look us up on the website and LinkedIn. We will be posting the video onto LinkedIn as well, so that you'll be able to find it. Just to close out, next week we've got another guest speaker. We've got Magnus Carlsen, who's going to be taking a look at the professionalization of innovation, and specifically lessons learned from how that's being done in Sweden at the moment, who seem to be leading the way globally. So it will be an interesting one to listen to. So with that,
and we're already working closely with Sweden on how that works and how we might do that in Ireland. So it's not just a good example. We're trying to make these things happen soon here. It's really practical.
Indeed. Thanks for that, Owen. So huge thank you. Round of applause for Brendan, and we'll hopefully see most of you, if not all of you, again next week. So have a great weekend and see you soon.
Bye,
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.